Hello guys, my name is Piros and this is Mediator in Depth Part 2. In this part we will talk about behaviors. Now, what are mediator behaviors? They're actual middlewares like the ones we have in an API-less application. I have a whiteboard here, and if you want to know more about middlewares and how they behave, I have a video on that and I will put a link in the description below. But long story short, when we have a request in our API, it comes to the server from the client, and now before it goes to the endpoint that's actually responsible for handling the request can go through some middlewares that we have defined. So it will go first to the first middleware, then to the second, etc. It will finally go to our endpoint, and before it returns back to the client, it will go through our middlewares again. And now it's the same with mediator. So if we say, for example, that in here we call the send method of our instance of the mediator, and we pass the request, and that's the handler of the request. The request, before it goes to the handler, it will go through our behaviors. It will finally go to our handler. Then the response will pass through our behaviors. And finally, we will have in the place where we called it the response. So let's see that in code. I have the same heroes API as before. We have in our controller 3 endpoints, and let me make the font bigger. Okay, so we have 3 endpoints, one for creating a hero, one for getting a hero by its ID, and one for deleting a hero. And all of these endpoints create a request that we send through mediator to its respective handler. So let's see how we can add behaviors. I'm going to close that, and I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call that behaviors, and inside there I'm going to create a new class. I will call that logging behavior. So as the name suggests, we will have a behavior responsible for logging all our requests. Now, the first thing I want to do is to make that generic, so that will be a logging behavior of T request and T response. And I want that, and let me fix that typo, and I want that to implement the iPipeline behavior of T request and T response. So iPipeline behavior of T request T response, and it prompts me to implement the missing members, and that's the handle method. And before I go and implement that, I want to add some constraints. I want to say that the T request, so where T request implements the iBase request, and I'm saying that because if we go to our let's say create hero command, that implements the I request of the hero. So if we jump into the code, we can see that the generic iRequest interface implements the iBase request, and the same goes for the iRequest that also implements the iBase request. So we want our behavior to work with both of these. So we will say that the T request is an iBase request, or implements an iBase request if you want. So next thing, I'm going to inject my logger, since we have dependency injection in here. So I'm going to say private read-only iLogger of logging behavior of T request T response. I will name that logger, and I will initialize that through the constructor. So now I'm going to make that async, and I'm going to log something. I'm going to say logger.log information, and I will say handling request, and I will pass the request as a parameter. So request, and since all of our requests are records, that will be serialized. And then all I'm going to do is return await next, and that next request handler delegate will invoke the next behavior, or if this is our only or our last behavior, it will invoke the handler itself. So I'm going to put a breakpoint in here, and I'm going to try this, but before I do that, I need to tell my application that to use that behavior. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my program.cs, and in here that we have our call to add mediator, and we pass some configurations. I'm going to pass some more configurations, and I'm going to say configuration, so cfg dot add open behavior. And the difference between an open behavior and the closed behavior is that the open is implemented with generic parameters as ours and not specific types. So I will say add open behavior, and in here I will pass the type of the behavior. So I'm going to say type of logging behavior, and I can also specify the lifetime. By default it's transient, and I'll leave it as it is. So now I can debug this. I will open Postman, and I have a request for creating a hero, specifically Spider-Man. I will send that request. We hit our breakpoint, and if I put another to our create hero command, we'll see that it will go then to our handler. So I'll hit continue. We go to our handler. I'll hit continue again, and if I go to the console, as you can see, it wrote handling request create hero command name equals Spider-Man. So that was our first behavior. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another behavior, and I will call that performance behavior, and I'm going to copy some stuff from the logging behavior. I will fix the name of the constructor, and I will implement the handle method. Now in that behavior I want to log the time that its request took. I'm going to take the start time. Before that, let's make that async. So var start time equals with stopwatch.get timestamp to get the current timestamp. And then I want to send the request to the other behaviors and finally to its handler, and I want to capture that response. So I will say var response equals with await next, and now I have the response. Now I'll get the current timestamp again, so I'm going to say var and time equals with stopwatch dot get timestamp. I can use the get elapsed time, but let's do it that way for now. And now I want to take the elapsed milliseconds, so elapsed ms equals with end time minus the start time times 1000, and I will divide that by the stopwatch frequency. So stopwatch.frequency, that will give us our milliseconds, and I'm going to say logger.log information, and let's say, excuse me, request, and in here we will have the name of the request, took, and let's say ms for millisecond, ms, and I want the request.getType.name and the elapsed milliseconds, and finally I want to return the response, so return response. Now I want that performance behavior to be prior to the logging behavior, because the logging behavior is part of the process, so we want to measure that as well. So the order that our behaviors will be registered is the same as the order when we register them in our program.cs or wherever else we configure mediator. So I want my logging behavior to be next to the performance behavior, so I'm going to register performance behavior first. And that was it. So let's put some breakpoints to see it in action. Let's debug that, and actually first let's make a request to see what will be logged in the console. So I'm going to create Spider-Man again, and as you can see we have handling request create hero command name equals Spider-Man, and request create hero command took 4 milliseconds. Now I'm going to put some breakpoints, first in our logging behavior, then in our performance behavior I'll put one before we handle the request and one after when we have the response, and I will put one in the get hero by ID query, and I will take that ID and I'm trying to get that hero. So we hit our performance behavior breakpoint first, then we will go to our logging behavior, then to our handler, and finally back to the performance behavior, and the response is, as you can see, the hero. So I'll hit continue, and let's go back to our console. Handling request get hero by ID query and the ID, and then it took 5 seconds because of our breakpoints. But as you saw, they worked as expected in the order they expected to be. So that was it about mediator behaviors. We see how they work and how we can register them. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. In the next one, we will talk about mediator notifications. Until then, thank you for watching and have a nice one.